Hello YouTube, welcome back to yet another retro channel. Today on the bench we have a TRS-80 Color Computer. This is the one referred to as the Color Computer 1, although at the time of its release, since there weren't a 2 and a 3, it was just called the TRS-80 Color Computer. It was Tandy Radio Shack's entry into the color home computer field following their reasonable success with the original TRS-80 monochrome computers. And this particular computer, it's been through some things. It's got busted shell. Its case has apparently, my guess is, has been dropped, and it was dropped on this rear corner back here because the corner is cracked open. Many of the posts and standoffs in the shell were broken. I've spent a lot of time trying to glue them back together with moderate success, at least enough to make the computer usable. As you can see with this model, with this particular color computer, I'm using the RF output. There's been no modification for composite or any other type of more modern or more usable video. You can see in the screen, if you can ignore the Moore patterns produced by the camera, there is still some RF distortion. There's some ghosting and fringing. There are some jail bars. So the video output on this is not great. What we're going to do today, what I'm going to do today, is I'm going to recap this motherboard to hopefully help that to some extent. And then we're going to take a look at possibly giving it a composite mod. Now, the Color Computer 1 should be easy to composite mod, because what you have in the way of a video output is you have the 6847 VDG, video display generator, and then you have this little circuit here, this little IC here, called the MC1372P, and that is an RF output generator. Now this chip is designed to produce RF output, which begs the question why Tandy also included an RF modulator. I'm not sure what's going on there, but this chip should be able to actually produce the RF output. But how they have it wired up, to produce an RF output, this chip has to have a tank circuit attached that produces the carrier frequency for the channel you want to display on. And that's fed into this chip, and then the NTSC signal is modulated on top of that carrier wave. However, if you simply wire this up without a tank circuit and give it a diode and a resistor across those pins to 5 volts, then this chip will produce an NTSC composite signal on its output pin. That's the way it's wired up in this configuration. So it's the output pin 12 on here, actually brings out a composite video signal. Now, in directly testing or directly hooking up to it, it doesn't actually produce a signal, or at least enough of a signal for a composite NTSC, either my retro tank or a direct connection to a monitor. It doesn't work, so I'm going to have to look into modifying that signal in some way to get it to be more compliant with NTSC so that it will produce an actual output. But the first step here, like I said, is to recap this board. Now, this came out in 1980, and this looks like a 1980 model. It's the earliest revision of the board, so I'm guessing it came out in either 1980 or 80. It was produced in either 1980 or 81, making this computer 52 to 53 years old. capacitors, electrolytic capacitors. Don't get me wrong, many of them do live longer than this, but their average lifespan is expected to be around 25 years. So these things are elderly. And as you can see from the video image, there is some distortion being introduced. And I'm thinking that may be because some of the power filtering is not up to snuff. So I'm going to do a recap of this board. To do that, I need to take it out of the case, disassemble it. So I'm going to shut down the video, or shut down the power here. I'm going to remove the keyboard, which in this case is not quite the same ribbon cable as is on later models. It's actually a connector. There we go. Now I've already got this motherboard loose. As I said, I've been working on it before. I'm going to remove the transformer, but as a precaution here, I'm going to go ahead and unplug it, because unlike many computers, this transformer is always receiving mains power. It's not switched before the transformer, which I think is a little sketchy, I admit. So remove the connections to the motherboard from the transformer. I did take the precaution of labeling these connections so I know how to put them back. There's the transformer. And now we can simply lift the board out. Remove the RF connection. If you want to see a little of the work I've done, as you can see, the part that holds the transformer in place was badly shattered. Obviously the transformer is heavy. My glue job was not very good, though it does give it at least a place to rest. I couldn't recover the screw post, or the screw sockets, so I won't be able to screw that transformer in place when I put this back together, but it is what it is. These are some additional bits of plastic that I never found where they went. But I did have to glue in these standoffs. Good as I could get it. So, now, as with recapping any board, the best thing to do is to go through the capacitors one by one. Remove each one and then put its replacement in before you move on to the next. That way you make sure that you're getting the right values, you make sure you're getting the polarity correct. Electrolytic capacitors are polarized, so they have to go in a certain direction, and they're indicated, as you can see here. That's a minus sign pointing towards this end. So the negative end of this capacitor is here, the positive end is here. The same is true for the other capacitors on the uprights. You'll see again, there'll be a, yeah, there's a, I don't know if you can see it, but there is a strip on the capacitor showing the direction, or showing which of the two leads coming out of the bottom end is the negative lead. So you simply go through it one by one, remove the capacitor, replace it with its equivalent new replacement. So I'm going to actually, you've seen this over and over again, desoldering and resoldering on other people's videos, other YouTubers. So I don't think there's much value in showing you the process. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording. I'm going to do the recapping. Okay. Well, through the magic of video editing, we now have a recapped TRS-80 Color Computer. I've replaced all the electrolytics, and as you can see in the video, well, as you probably can't see in the video, a lot of the interference has cleared up. There are still a small amount of jail bars and a small amount of interference. Some of the ghosting and color fringing are still there. And there is still a slight green tint to the black background, which I don't think is coming across in the camera because of the color correction in the camera. So our next step is to attempt to composite mod this computer. There are two ways that I can do this. One is there is a circuit board that was produced back in the 80s and has been recently recreated. Don't see it at the moment. I have a few of them that I purchased. I had made by PCBWay. I can build one of those up, and I can put that in the board, put that in the computer, and get some composite out. Or I can attempt, as I said, to use the existing MC1372 composite output and try to get it compliant. So let me do some research and a little playing with some of this circuitry and see what I can do, and I will get back to you. Welcome back. It's the next day. I spent a good deal of time looking at the signal coming out of the MC1372P, the composite signal. I couldn't find a way to make it compatible with NTSC, the standard. So what I ended up doing is I used one of these. This, if it'll focus, is a circuit board reproducing a product from the 80s that you could get for your color computer. It's called a UVD, or Universal Video Driver. It was originally produced by a company called Mark Data. It's called a Universal Video Driver because it's designed to allow you to create composite output from the CoCo 1 or CoCo 2, any revision. It connects to 5 points on the motherboard, and then you have a video out and an audio out. So you create both composite video and audio outputs out of this. Now, the original board came pre-assembled from Mark Data, obviously, and what you would get would be the 5 connections to the computer came out on colored wires with colored test clips that you'd use to connect to the motherboard, and then an audio and video output leading to RCA connectors. I found this project on PCBWay's shared projects, and I had these circuit boards printed. Of course, when you get the circuit board printed, obviously all you get is the circuit board. You have to populate everything yourself. So I populated all the components, and I made spaghetti on in my color computer. I took each of the wired connections, and instead of having test clips, I actually soldered them onto their positions on the motherboard, as I'm planning on leaving this in. So, sorry. What you see here is you have one ground connection, one plus 5 volt. Sorry, I should turn this over for you. You have a ground connection. You have a plus 5 volts, and then you have connections for video to the chroma output from the 1372, the luma and sync output from the VDG, the 6847, and you have a connection to the audio coming into the RF modulator. So that's 5 total connections. Using these passive components, this board drives both a video signal, the yellow and black here, and an audio signal, the red and black here. Now to show you the difference here between what the UVD produces and what the MC1372 produces, I'm going to go ahead and scope these 2 signals for you. You'll see if I switch this on, we do have composite video output at this point. Everything works fine. It's a pretty clear signal. Well worth putting the time and energy into this. Hang on a second. Pardon me. There we go. Had a cord tangled up. So, the supposed NTSC composite video out from the 1372 is on pin 12. So I'm going to look at pin 12 here. Now I have this AC coupled so that the DC offset is dropped out of it so that I can compare the 2 signals. But the DC offset on the 1372 is about 5 volts. So this signal that you're looking at sits 5 volts above ground. I know that's a problem, and I did try using a capacitor to decouple the DC from the signal. That didn't seem to help any. Just a couple of things I notice I think you should pay attention to is look at if you know NTSC signals, the front porch and the back porch, which are these tiny little rises in the signal at the beginning and end. Note them, and then very, very tiny in here, you can see the color burst signal. It's very weak. So those are 2 things I noticed, and I'm not sure how to correct with the MC1372. However, the composite video output from the UVD, you look at that, and you see very little in the way of a front or back porch, and you see that the color burst signal is much more pronounced, as is the actual color and luminance signal going through. So I'm not sure how to fix the 1372 or to correct that signal to create a composite output. I'll continue to research that in the future, but for now, my solution for this is to go with the UVD. So what I need to do at this point is mount the UVD within the case and reassemble I would say reassemble the case, but truth be told, this case still needs some cleaning before I'm ready to put it fully back together. But yeah, this is a good solution. I will put the link to the shared project on PCBWay in the comments below. So if any of you decide you want to use this solution to get composite video out of your color computer, you can do that. Again, this works for the Color Computer 1 and Color Computer 2. I don't know that you couldn't use it for the 3. You might be able to. However, there's very little point to that because the 3 does have its analog RGB output that you can use to connect either to a monitor that accepts that or to something like the RGB to HDMI. I know that Pi Zeros are a little hard to come by right now, but you can still get them. Therefore, you can still build up RGB to HDMIs. I also have another project that I saw on PCBWay for a Pi Pico to RGB to HDMI on a Pi Pico that I'm planning on building up and seeing what I can do with. The Pi Picos are not at a shortage. You can get the Pi Picos with no difficulty whatsoever right now. So if that works, that will be a good solution to the problem of the shortage of Pi Zeros. The next thing I really have to do with this computer, and I'll take a look at that with you online here. Previously I performed a 64K upgrade to this machine. So these are 64K memory chips, 4164s, and all these silly little bodge wires in here are part of that modification. However, I did just test, and my testing shows that this computer is only recognizing 32K according to the diagnostics cartridge. So I'm going to look into that and see if I possibly did anything wrong with this modification. So that will be the next step in this video. Well, viewers, I apologize. Turns out after further testing that this color computer is actually configured with the full 64K, not 32K. It turns out that this diagnostics cartridge is designed for the original color computer configuration, which they only sold up. They sold a 4K, a 16K, and a 32K version of this machine. So it does not attempt to put the machine into full RAM mode or test the upper RAM. I'll have to find another diagnostics to use in the future. There may be one in the Color Computer Archive, which I have, of course, on my CoCo SDC. In the meantime, that is going to be it for this particular video. As I said, I'm going to find a way to mount this into the inside of the case, probably mount it on top of the RF modulator, and then feed the two cables, the audio and video cables, out around the original connector. But that's going to do it, and I appreciate you watching. Stay tuned. We'll be bringing you another video in the very near future, let's say. So thanks. Have a great day. Be safe. We'll see you later.